Hey friends, I'm Jill Castle, a pediatric dietitian, mom to 4 kids, and host of this podcast. I started this podcast in 2016 as a way to help families and healthcare professionals learn more about nutrition and feeding kids. My goal has always been to make nourishing your families easier through breaking down science into understandable concepts you can put into practice right away, and shedding light on and improving the emotional well-being of kids through feeding and food. You can always go deeper on my website, thenourishchild.com, where I have resources for children ages birth through teen. I'm always so grateful you're here, and I hope you enjoy the show.
Welcome to the Nourish Child Podcast, a show about childhood nutrition, feeding kids, and dealing with the ups and downs of growing a healthy child. Here's your host, registered dietitian and childhood nutrition expert, Jill Castle.
Hello, friends. Welcome back to the Nourish Child Podcast. Today, we are in our second episode of the Best of Summer. Our topic today is extreme picky eating. And if you have a child with extreme picky eating, you know it's more than regular picky eating. Or if you have a child with ARFID, avoidant restrictive food intake disorder, you'll be especially interested in this episode. So I'm talking first about a study that came out in 2019 from Zucker et al. In the International Journal of Eating Disorders. And it is some of the most interesting science, I think, on what we know about extreme picky eating. Specifically, Zucker and colleagues looked at what contributes to food avoidance in ARFID and extreme picky eating. And more specifically, why doesn't repeated exposure to food work for some children? We've known that anxiety is a big piece of ARFID and extreme picky eating. And when you look at anxiety treatment, exposing an individual over and over and over to the anxiety producing factor helps them move forward. But in children with ARFID and extreme picky eating, anxiety isn't always the cause of why children avoid food. One theory is that disgust is a big issue. And the primary function of disgust is to help humans avoid poisons and pathogens. But disgust can be triggered. And in this study, they classified disgust as nausea and what they called stomach malaise, or just having an upset stomach at the sight of a food that they were fearful of or had a past history with, or just looked at and found it disgusting. Disgust can be triggered by odor, texture, or appearance, and it leads to food avoidance. In this study, they looked at over 1,600 adults who had extreme picky eating or ARFID and who completed an online questionnaire measuring the degree of their picky eating, their sensory sensitivity, disgust, and anxiety. And the researchers found that disgust is strongly associated with picky eating severity and ARFID classification. As a result of their findings, they suggest that interventions targeted at anxiety, like repeated food exposure, might be limited for children who experience disgust. So they say, and I agree with this, I find this so interesting, that treatment of extreme picky eating or ARFID must take into account the root of avoidance. Why is a child avoiding food? Is it anxiety? Is it disgust? Is it a combination of both? And as you know on this podcast and in some of the ARFID guide that I wrote, sometimes there's an underlying medical condition that we have to also look at. So they also suggest that perhaps we need to change our expectations for children with extreme picky eating and ARFID, because we go into treatment expecting that we're going to change food preferences, expecting that we are going to mold food preferences to a better place. But they're suggesting that perhaps we need to change our expectations and the outcomes that we're looking for, that perhaps maybe we aren't looking to make a child like a certain type of food, that perhaps that's not an expectation that we should be having for these children. Kids change a lot. Their nutrition needs, eating habits, and food preferences do too. So much so, it can be hard to keep up. The Nourished Child, a website designed for parents who want more nutrition education, helps parents like you get crystal clear on raising good eaters. We've cracked the code on nourishing the whole child, whether you're raising a baby, a teen, or a child with health concerns. Our nutrition school and parent education programs help you get the inside scoop on food and nutrients, positive food parenting, and building self-motivated, autonomous kids who are good eaters. Visit thenourishedchild.com today. So I found that really, really interesting. I don't think we talk enough about disgust. Disgust is sort of that primary protector for humans to avoid poisonous foods. It can be triggered with nausea, feeling like you're going to throw up. And I have, in fact, in working with children over the years, had them say to me, when I look at that, I think I'm going to throw up, or that's disgusting. And I think we need to be paying attention more to their language and their behavior around food, because I think it can give us a little bit more information. If you want to go deeper into extreme picky eating, check out episode number 58. On that episode, I interview Stephanie Elliott. She is the author of Sad Perfect, a book that tells the story of a 16-year-old girl with ARFID who happens to be her daughter. And she describes her daughter's struggles with disease, love, and itemizes, really dives into how she was able to recover and overcome avoidant restrictive food intake disorder, or ARFID. Also, episode number 44, for those of you who are fans of Melanie Potok, we talk about how to help extreme picky eaters from a food therapy standpoint and some of the treatment modalities that are used in treating ARFID patients and extreme picky eaters. And then last, episode number 88, I talk with Alicia Grogan, who is also a food therapist or a feeding therapist, but she specializes in occupational therapy. And we talk about making sense of sensory issues, or really the reasons why our children reject certain types of food, which is often related to sensory issues. So if you have a child with ADHD or autism, this will be especially for you as well. Sometimes children, they don't like the texture of food, or they think food smells weird, or they don't like the color green in their food. All of this can be very frustrating as a parent to understand why they think these things. And that's what Alicia talks about on this episode. She talks about sensory processing challenges with a special focus on how it impacts childhood eating. And she also covers the telltale signs that your child has sensory issues. So if you're suspecting or suspicious of sensory issues, this will be a good episode for you to go a little bit deeper on. Remember, these best of summer episodes are designed to be fleeting, brief, just to give you a quick update on science, on particular topics that we've covered on the podcast, and give you a quick scientific update, and then point you to additional episodes where you can go deeper or go back and re-listen. That is it for today, friends. These are short and sweet so that you can enjoy your summer, and so can I. I thank you so much for listening to the Nourished Child podcast. If you did enjoy this show, or if you found it to be helpful, please be sure to rate and review it on your favorite place where you listen to podcasts. And don't ever forget to give that child in your life a loving squeeze today. Bye for now.
Thanks for listening to the Nourished Child podcast, where the #1 goal is to help you grow a nourished child inside and out.